Good evening and welcome. Let's take a look at the top story we're tracking for you on your story this evening. Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko is seeking to cement his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin's support as the two prepare to meet in Sochi today. Now, this will be their fourth in-person meeting since anti-government protests began in Belarus last year. Now, the talks come as the European Union prepares to impose sanctions on Belarus for forcing a Ryanair flight to land in Minsk and then arresting a popular dissident who was on board. However, Lukashenko has said that economic issues are on the agenda of the meeting with Putin. Earlier, Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin met his Belarusian counterpart in Minsk, and he condemned the EU sanctions on the ex-Soviet nation, saying that they were unilateral.
The Russian Federation stands firmly against unilateral sanctions and dictation at the international scene. We call not to politicize the situation with urgent planes landing in Minsk. We support our Belarusian partners' position of necessity and readiness to conduct a transparent international investigation at the level of the aviation authorities.
Moscow is among Minsk's few remaining allies at a time when it has been facing international isolation. Experts believe that Lukashenko has been emboldened by Putin's support. The Russian president supported Lukashenko as he faced demonstrations after coming back to power in a disputed election last year. Now, Lukashenko, who is often dubbed as Europe's last dictator, has been ruling Belarus for almost 27 years. Now, his opponents have accused him of poll rigging. Since last year, Russia has offered Belarus billions of dollars in loans. This comes as a part of Russia's attempts to continue wielding its influence over former Soviet nations and to stop them from moving closer to the West. Our WION correspondent Daria Bondarchuk is joining us live from Moscow for more on the story. Thanks for being with us, Daria. Now, Lukashenko is seeking to cement his relationship and the support that he gets from Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin as the two prepare to meet in Sochi today. Will you take us through the importance of this support for Lukashenko, considering Putin is one of the last allies in Europe?
Well, during this meeting, the leaders of both countries will have a chance to discuss bilateral ties, trade and economic cooperation. Ahead of the beginning of the meeting, the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov also said that he did not exclude that both countries' leaders could be discussing the recent incident with the diversion of a passenger plane that took place on Sunday, over which Belarus fell under international criticism and stands accused of violating international laws. As you know, Moscow previously has backed Minsk and said that it acted in line with the law and reasonably. But at the same time, Russia has also criticized the West over its attempt to link Russia to the incident, saying it had no role to play in it. But as the leaders of both countries are meeting in Sochi today, they will be discussing trade. They will be discussing possible help from Moscow to Minsk, who is now facing suspension of flights over its airspace by Europe and thus missing a lot of income that Belarus used to get from passenger jets crossing its airspace. And the Belarusian leader, just before heading off to Moscow, said today that he is indeed hoping to discuss with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin the possibility of restoring a full-scale air service between Russia and Belarus and possibly opening new destinations for residents of Belarus in Russia. There could be also an issue of the Belarusian state debt being discussed, and also sector-to-sector industrial cooperation. As we know, the European Union has threatened further and stricter sanctions against Belarus over the incident with the diverted plane, and that could affect a significant part of the Belarusian economy. We know also earlier the European Union has suspended a 3 billion euro investment project with Belarus. So there is a lot to discuss between the leaders and sort of what sort of financial economic help Russia could provide to Minsk, who is now stands sort of facing this mounting pressure from Europe and from other Western countries over the incident with the jet. And these countries do demand that Minsk releases the arrested journalist who was on board that plane that was grounded in Minsk on Sunday. And also some European foreign ministers earlier demanded that Belarus should release hundreds of other opposition activists who have been detained in Belarus since last summer, when nationwide protests, anti-government protests began following disputed results of the presidential election. So while domestically this meeting could be seen as an opportunity for both countries to discuss further integration and greater cooperation and ways for Belarus to make up the money that it may lose in Europe if indeed the sanctions are implemented, make it up in the Russian market and possibly getting greater access to Russia's market. At the same time, internationally, this meeting is seen as a show of great support from Moscow to Minsk in face of these accusations. The UN representative of Belarus said that there has been an earlier statement by the UN Security Council members. Some of them have signed a joint statement condemning Belarus and accusing it of hijacking basically that plane and violating international norms. Belarus insists that such conclusions are too early to be drawn, and it's too early to make any allegations of that sort before there is a detailed probe into all the circumstances of the incident. And this is the same stance that Moscow earlier took, calling for a detailed probe. And we know that the UN aviation body, the International Civil Aviation Organization, is launching an investigation into this incident to see and establish whether indeed there has been a breach of international air regulations.
Right, Darren, our experts believe that Lukashenko has been emboldened by Putin's support. And as you have explained, we do expect economic issues to be on the agenda during the talk. Take us through some of the other most important issues that will be raised on the agenda in the face of these possible lingering sanctions following the Ryanair landing.
Well, Belarus might, its airlines, national airlines, are already affected. It is prohibited from flying to Europe and using European air transport hubs. We know that many European countries, in accordance with the recommendation of the European Aviation Agency, have been avoiding airspace above Belarus, and 16 airlines belonging to European countries and 11 European countries are already abiding by that. So Belarusian side could lose a lot from that. Russia, in its turn, has also denied access to several flights from Europe recently by Air France and Austrian Airlines, citing that it did not approve a change of route when the airlines tried to fly into Russia, avoiding airspace over Belarus. But since then, the Kremlin has said that those issues have been technical and that specialists are working on avoiding that and sort of coordinating with the European airlines possible points of entry into Russian airspace. Thus, we see that there has been some progress in that area, and that possibly flights will between Europe and Russia will resume as normal, but they will still be banned for Belarusian companies, airlines going into Europe.
So thank you very much for bringing us all the latest details there.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.